Today, I'm going to be talking about Radiohead's Kid A, and why, while people originally saw it as pretentious nonsense, it over time became regarded as one of the best albums of all time. Yes, I do know this says Kid Amnesia, not Kid A. Picture this. It's 1997, OK Computer has just come out, the critics are handing it Album of the Decade plaques before the decade's even ended, and Radiohead are being hailed as 90s rock messiahs. But in their usual Radiohead fashion, they hated this. While they didn't enjoy themselves on previous tours, the one after OK Computer completely broke them. Thom Yorke had a full-on mental crash, stopped writing songs, and reportedly couldn't even listen to music without panicking. He described Fame as being like a pig being prodded by a stick, and the whole band fell into existential creative paralysis, basically. So after the whole thing, they disappear. No interviews, no studio updates, no new music. Until one night, Thom is alone in his car driving home and listening to the radio, possibly with his head, when suddenly they start playing Aphex Twin, and he gets inspired. He somehow convinces all of his bandmates to not ditch their instruments for computers, but to use them like nobody has used them before, as if they were computers. So they did it. They ditched traditional song structures and choruses. Thom's lyrics become cut up, abstracted, and buried under effects, as if whoever produced it was trying to erase them entirely. They were already the biggest band in the world, but they wanted to stop sounding like that. Until eventually, in 2000, Kid A released. Kid A comes out, and millions of fans collectively say, "What the fuck is this labyrinth of electronic jazz anxiety from the future?" Because that's the best way I can really describe this album. The paranoia of OK Computer is still there, but that's kind of the only thing that carries over from the last album. This is like the opposite of rock music, nearly. It's one of those albums where you can nearly guarantee to someone that hasn't listened to it that they have never heard anything like this, or at least anything like this that is this good. Because that's the other thing, this album is insanely good. Although a lot of people didn't think so at the time, especially critics. A lot of them felt like this was Radiohead going creatively bankrupt, ironically. They thought the band had ruined their reputation by just copying what Aphex Twin had already been doing 10 years earlier. I mentioned Aphex Twin already, and I can't deny that he had so much influence over this album, even though he didn't really like it himself. But over time, those critics would go on to praise this album to death. And the lyrics are a lot different this time around. They're much more dreamlike, and they're obscured in the mix a lot of the time. But that's intentional. You aren't meant to listen to the lyrics. You're meant to feel them and treat them as if they were just another instrument. To the point where the physical copies of the album didn't even come with any lyric sheets. On Kid A, Thom Yorke strips away narrative for, I guess, impressionistic just fragments of ideas and narratives. The lyrics feel like journal entries that have been torn to pieces. They're surreal and you're only getting parts of the story, but they're still really emotionally potent, I guess. Even if you don't grasp all of the lyrics the first time around, the vibes of them alone will get the point across. With themes of disassociation with the world around you, mass societal panic, the apocalyptic effects of climate change, and just wanting to disappear from the world, it's once again clear that Thom is struggling to connect with the world around him. He feels like he's both the most important man on the planet and being left behind at the same time. As for the best songs, it's hard to pin them down because not only is this one of my favorite albums from one of my favorite bands, it's also one where almost all the songs are just of a really high quality, so you could really pick any group of them and call them the best. Some honorable mentions I'm going to throw out there are Optimistic, In Limbo, and Motion Picture Soundtrack. So we're going to start with the starting song, Everything in Its Right Place. And what a song to start your album. Imagine expecting OK Computer 2 and then hearing this. It nails being an opener in that it perfectly establishes the vibe of the album. It's cold, weird, somewhat unnerving, but you can't deny that those lead synths have a sort of analog warmth to them that I just find really comforting, honestly, despite how cold they might sound. There's a lot of contrast. There are so many electronic sounds floating around your head that it can be hard to keep track of everything happening at some points. The lyrics show a confused Thom Yorke unable to keep track of everything happening in the ever-changing state of the world, especially after the massive success of OK Computer. He's, becoming disassociated with the things around him. Next up, I'm gonna say the national anthem is one of the best songs. So after the opener and then the second track, which is the title track, this is the first song to really properly use real instruments, most notably the bass and some brass. Apparently the super catchy but simple bass was written by Yorke when he was just 16, and he also conducted the brass musicians along with Johnny Greenwood, who had always had an interest in classical music and jazz that would come to shine on later albums like A Moon-Shaped Pool. Apparently they told the musicians to play their instruments as if they wanted to kill somebody, and with that in mind, you can definitely hear the harshness of them, especially the more jazzy off-key parts. The part that stands out to me the most is the bit at the end, where the people they brought in for the brass were all just told to hit a bunch of random notes as hard as they possibly could, and it is, in my opinion, a perfect way to end the track. This song was originally meant for the Bends and later OK Computer, but ended up as a B-side, but they didn't really want to release it as a B-side because they thought it was too good for that, and I completely agree. It's about mass societal panic, and if the lyrics didn't get that across, the song called the national anthem devolving into chaos and noise probably will. The next song is also one of the best, How to Disappear Completely. So immediately after the madness of the national anthem, we get the acoustic guitar, soft singing, and grand sweeping strings of How to Disappear, one of Radiohead's most iconic songs. Thom was really struggling to cope with the stress of touring for OK Computer, so REM singer Michael Stipe told him to repeat the mantra, "I'm not here, this isn't happening," which became the chorus of this song, a dreamlike track where Thom seems to be detached from this body, or maybe a ghost as he wanders around Dublin, the capital of Ireland, at night. He mentions vague memories from concerts, like strobe lights and speakers. He also talks about floating down the River Liffey, which I wouldn't personally recommend. But yeah, no matter how many times I listen to this song, I'm always floored by just how ethereal it sounds. Later on the album, we have Idioteque. This one couldn't be any more different from How to Disappear, but that's part of what makes it so great, as it shows how versatile Radiohead were with their style on this album. It's a club banger for the end of the world. The weird electronic drums and synths have this really cold and robotic groove to them, and the lyrics have Thom Yorke wailing about climate change, mass panic, likely stand-ins for the common theme of Radiohead being incredibly stressed by being one of the biggest bands in the world, and finding it so insane that this is really happening that they can't help but laugh. I don't think everyone would put this on their best songs list, but I think it definitely deserves to be there. So as for the worst songs, if I have to pick some out, I guess the obvious pick would kind of be Untitled, but I'm not going to stick that on here because it's a hidden track and not really a part of the overall experience, I suppose. Well, it kind of is. It's just listed as another track on streaming services, but on physical copies, it plays after like a minute and a half after the last song, Motion Picture Soundtrack, ends. So it's kind of there, but okay, I'm not going to include it because it's a hidden track. That's how I do it. But if it wasn't a hidden track, it would absolutely be on the worst songs. Not that it's bad, it's just, a little thing to end it off if you stick around. It's a good post-credit scene of sorts, but it doesn't really add much. I guess for the worst song, I would say Three Fingers. So, remember how much I was gushing about How to Disappear Completely a minute ago? That song was just so incredibly good, such an emotional high, that it honestly could have been the closer to the album. Because how do you even follow something like that, right? The short answer is, you kinda can't. And Radiohead knew that, and put Three Fingers afterwards. A 4-minute ambient synth track inspired by early Aphex Twin. It's perfect within the context of the album, giving you room to breathe before going back into the depths with Optimistic. But on its own, it's obviously not nearly as good as some of the other stuff on here. The album cover, as always, designed by Stanley Donwood and Tom York. It's a digital glacial apocalypse. Jagged peaks, a burning sky. It's like the background of an early PS1 game that looks frozen and on fire at the same time. It's cold yet captivating. It's abstract. It feels like nostalgia or a memory of a place that you can't quite put your finger on where you remember it from. I think it's a cover that really fits the album well. I know I kept talking about Tom York a lot in this video, and all of my Radiohead videos, I guess, but that's because he's kind of the lead creative force for this album, and he does write all the lyrics, a very important part of any song. But the other members of the band, Johnny and Colin Greenwood, Ed O'Brien and Phil Selway, all deserve their credit for how they reinvented themselves and their style of music for this album. Kid A is not for everyone. It's not designed to please, but it's not necessarily designed to confuse. It's designed to feel. It's the sound of a band breaking everything that made them famous and building something cold and weird in its place. They didn't sell out. They could have just made OK Computer 2 and still be hailed as one of the best rock bands of their time, but by doing this instead, they entered the realm of being one of the best rock bands of all time. Is it as good as OK Computer? I don't think so personally, but it is still incredible. Overall, I'm feeling like 9.3 tree fingers for this album. Now, these songs weren't the only songs that Radiohead made during their recording sessions for Kid A. They made much, much more. In fact, they made so much more that less than a year later, they released another album, Amnesiac. And honestly, I think this one's really underrated, but you'll have to hear more about that in next week's video, which you'll get notified about if you're subscribed when it comes out. This is the reason it says Kid Amnesia, by the way. This is like a double release, double album of the two. So make sure to do that, and I'll see you then. Bye.